think we will be live any moment now. Okay. All right.
Meeting is now streaming live on Facebook. That's what it's telling me. We are live.
We are live. Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Laughter for All podcast. I am comedian Nazareth. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, for joining us. And we are show number 65. That means we are over a year now. And thank you guys so much for being loyal and down over 1,000 downloads and all that. But today I'm excited because I have a friend who's a comedian. And when I say friend, I feel guilty because we don't spend time together, but you know, this guy is amazing. He is hilarious. He is funny. He's one of the funniest people coming up in the business. I mean, I say coming up. He's been doing it for probably 20 years. But let me introduce him officially. He's a Seattle native, not native. Those natives are the ones who are protesting right now. He's a Seattle native now, surfing in Southern California. He's in demand comic on the rise. In addition to being recently featured in Comedy Central, Netflix by Kevin Hart, he's been seen on Fox, the Grand Ole Opry, Circle Network, PBS, Comedy Hour, Hulu, and he's contributed to the Huffington Post and can regularly be heard on Sirius Radio XM. Dustin describes himself as the world's most average person. He's not average, but in far is far from it when on stage. He brings you into his life through his jokes about the struggles of parenting, marriage, and being generally annoyed by most people. Yeah. So, Dustin, welcome, welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Naz, for having me. That makes me sound like a big deal, but in case anybody is actually thinks that, know that I wrote that bio. So
Oh, I gotta say this, and it's funny because I've always, and my kids are tired of hearing this, and my students who take comedy classes are also, I always say, you have to pay your dues. You have to be,
oh
if you
yeah.
want to do comedy, you have to really want to do it. You have to go, as far as you have to go on stage and to perform. I remember many years ago, I was headlining the Tempe Improv in Arizona, and at the time you were living in San Diego, when you moved to San Diego. I'm talking about over 6 hours, people. I called him the same day, probably if you the same day. I say, hey Dustin, I need a feature act to go before me. Can you make it? And he drove over 6 hours. Now, my hat off to you. Not many comics would have done that, but that's why you are where you're at because of that. So thank you
Thank you.
so
I
much.
tell that story a lot actually because I did that, and then after the show, you go, "Where are you staying?" And I said, "I'm driving back," because I still had a day job at the time, and then so I drove the 12-hour round trip, and he said, "You drove 12 hours for 10 minutes." And then you gave me a tip. You gave me extra money, like a financial tip, and said, "I know you're going to be successful because you're that dedicated." So
You are.
that's a story I tell. I mean, it hasn't come true yet, but hopefully.
Oh, tell
I'm
me,
kidding.
you know what? It's funny because you started in Seattle. Tell us what happened. How did you start? You were young when you started. How long you been doing comedy?
Actually, I was a little bit older. So my life started in Seattle. I'm from Seattle, but I started comedy where I'm at now in San Diego. I was 27 when I started, and I was married with 2 kids. So I kind of had like a whole life before comedy. I was a late bloomer.
So what did you do before comedy?
Oh man, I did a little bit of everything. I was a journalist for a while. I was a minister for a while. The
Oh,
last
you
day
were a minister?
I was, yeah, yeah. And the
Interesting.
last day job I had, I worked at a rec center, like a YMCA. I was middle management at a rec center. So there you go.
Now, when did you know you're like, I'm funny. I want to be a comedian.
Um, I think when I did it for the first time, I always loved comedy. I remember, stand-up comedy was, it's somewhat being lost on a generation because it's not around as much. When I grew up, stand-up comedy was on TV all the time. There would be
Right.
HBO specials, there'd be Showtime specials, and Comedy Central would air stand-up all the time. And now it's comedy shows, but not stand-up. So I was always in love with stand-up comedy and had never tried it. And then I did my first open mic at
Where was that?
Madhouse Comedy Club in downtown San Diego. And I did 5 minutes. No, excuse me. I did 3 minutes for 5 people, which actually wasn't bad. Like I did plenty of open mics with less than 5 people down the road. And I got 2 laughs. I remember they laughed halfway through it and then they laughed at the end. And I was kind of hooked from there,
What year was that? What year was that?
This would have been 2012, 8 years ago. Yeah, 2012.
And you had 2 kids at the time.
2 kids. I'd been married for 9 years and had 2 kids at the time.
And then you said, this is what I want to do. And this is, I'm willing to pay the extra effort and time to do it.
Yes, I think I did it maybe 3 more times and said, I want to do this as more than a hobby. I want this to be my job. Not just my job. I want this to be who I am. I want to be a stand-up comedian. Now, it would be a long time before that was just my job, but the commitment started then.
Take me to the night where you told your wife, this is what I want to do.
I don't think I had the gall to just tell her that right to her, but it was more like, hey, can I go do another open mic, honey? Or I think she saw it coming. But the great thing about stand-up is it's so metric based, and that if your career's going better or worse. You're getting more laughs, you're getting more shows, you're getting past at better clubs. You go from opener to feature to headliner. It's very incremental. And financially, it kind of became that way where it was like, hey, I remember my first paid gig ever. They go, we'll pay you $20 in a beer. And I was like, could I make it just the $25? Could I
keep the beer?
Exactly. And so it was just kind of, it goes from, a little bit of extra spending money to grocery money to holy smokes, that just paid rent this month, So as that happened to come in a little more, it got to the point where I think she saw I could actually make more money, which is not saying much, doing this, that she was a little more okay with the idea. But she's an artist too. She gets it.
She's an artist. What does she do? She's a singer
she's a graphic designer.
I see.
So she actually can make real stuff. You and I, we just talk. We don't, what did you remember? George Carlin said, right? He said he was in an interview and they go, "Well, comedy is an art form." He goes, "Well, comedy is an art form, but it's a low art form."
No, take me back to the night you said to your wife, and what was going in your mind when you said, "Okay, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to go full time."
Yeah, it was definitely, what it was I got, I'm indebted to Tim Hawkins in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I had done a couple weekends with him, and him and his team came and said, "Dustin, we want to offer you," I think it was 9 or 10 weekends for the upcoming year. And it was actually celebratory because I went to my wife and I said, "We can do this. We have, our plan was always, we wanted to have 18 months worth of money in the bank and 18 months worth of money on the books. Like if everything dried up, we could still make it a couple of years, and Tim's offer kind of put us there. And so it was actually very celebratory. I came to her, I said, "I got this offer. I don't have to work at the rec center anymore." And it was a bit of a relief to her because, at that point, you know how it is. When you quit your day job, you're usually at a point where you're working like a full-time comic. Yeah, I was working 2 full-time jobs at that point. I would leave work most of the time. I would open at the rec center on Fridays or Thursdays. So I'd get there at 5 a.m. and then I would leave around noon or 1 and go get on a flight or go drive somewhere, and then I'd be gone for the weekend, and then I would fly home Monday morning, take a shower, and go back to the job. So it was kind of a relief for all of us because I was going to be around at least a little bit.
That's funny because that's my story too, and I think that's why you are. I'm just saying. You know what? It's hard sometimes when you talk to comics who have day jobs and say, "Hey, I've been at it, but I've never." And you know why? They did not do that sacrifice that you're doing, and your wife and your kids are doing that. How old are your
Yeah.
kids now?
My kids are 13, 11, and 6.
So,
Yeah.
so the 13-year-old, the boy,
Yeah. Boy, girl, girl. Joel, Gloria, and Claire.
and the boy, of course, doesn't think you're funny at this age, or does he still?
No, no, no. He doesn't think I'm funny at all. I would say the best part about me doing that project with Kevin Hart was I finally impressed him.
How did that come about with Kevin Hart?
It was a showcase. It was so Kevin Hart has this show called Heart of the City where he focuses. He highlights comedians in non LA or New York, and they did an episode on San Diego, and I went and auditioned for it, and got it. They highlighted me and 2 others, and then they actually took that segment from that and put it in his Netflix documentary as well. So that was a cool project.
How did that help your career? Or?
No, 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 no. It does. It wasn't a big. I think. What year did you start, Naz? You've been in the game for
1990 is when I started.
Okay, so you were on the tail end of the Johnny Carson years, right?
Yes,
So
that was one of my dreams. Like, how you think so big in the beginning, like, oh, I'm gonna be doing it in 2 months. I'm gonna be on the Carson, and that's
yeah,
it. My career is gonna flow.
yeah, yeah. But once upon a time, there was something that could make your career, and the comedy game that I fell into, I started in, is not that way. I always say we're more like, what we do now is more like, and maybe it's always been this way, but there's not one thing that can make you anymore. It's more like
Right.
Andy in Shawshank Redemption, where he just comes and each night he just chips away. And that's what I feel like I'm doing. I go up, I did 2 sets tonight. I wrote a few new jokes. I worked, and I put out a couple social media things. I'm just chipping away. And even you'll see get something real big. And, sometimes getting big early in your career can actually be a curse because you weren't ready for it.
It does. It does. It does.
I'm sure you've seen that. Yeah.
Yes, and you're right because what do you call it? I always do that. I was like, every day. I said, if I can write every day, and if I can make couple calls, that was before the pandemic. If I can make couple calls, if I can do something marketing wise, then you know what? I don't have to worry about that I didn't do anything productive today. So to me that was it. But I love this. There's so much similarity in what you're doing now. When you started doing comedy, did you talk about a lot about parenting and being a dad, and you started parenting when you were 20 something, but
Yeah.
what is your theme? What do you do, like when people watch you? What do they go home with?
I'm always trying to make a connection. I'm trying to come up with I want people I want people to feel seen. I want their to feel related to. And because there's when somebody tells you a joke and it's just a great joke, you laugh at it. But then there's like a deeper level of when you really connect with something, whether it's an idea or it's an experience that you've had. Like I have a joke that I do about not being able to sleep very well. And I can always feel the people in the audience who also are bad sleepers, just feel connecting with it. And so I try and pull from everyday stuff. I talk a lot about I would say that the main theme is relationships with kids, your spouse, your friends, your neighbor, relationship with the guy at the customer service desk, relationship with whoever it may be. Relationships and human connections are what I'm trying to tap into.
That's awesome. So how often do you write? How often do you write your comedy?
I write every day. I it's not a sit down for me. As an idea comes out, there are different. There's so many different platforms now where I go, okay, well maybe I'll try and tweet that joke or see if that resonates with people, or maybe I'll put that on Instagram, or maybe I'll make a video out of that. But I'm definitely creating content every day. And then the real prized ones where I was like, no, this is great. To me, I'm like, that's for the stage and nothing else.
That's right.
I don't want to waste that somewhere else. That belongs on the stage in front of real people,
Now, you through the pandemic, I know I'm going to ask you what you were doing, and then I want to get to the overwhelmed project that you did. But so the pandemic started in March. How many shows were canceled for you?
Oh man, for my own health's sake, I stopped counting. That, and I stopped counting money. At first I was like, oh, we're losing this amount. And then I was like, I'm going to get rid of this tally. This isn't helping me. I would say, on average, I would do, it's an easy number to calculate because I count my sets, I guess. On average, I would do about 3 to 325 sets a year. Shows, and that's going to be about 125 this year. So, 2/3 of my calendar.
Wait, let me say this again. You do 325 shows a year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And still, what does your kids say about that?
Well,
that's the whole year.
That is, but a lot of that's multiple a night. A lot of that's in town. A lot of that's like in San Diego or in LA, where I'll go do 2, 3, sometimes 4 in one night. Right, so it's not 325 dates a year.
Right. I know.
That would be the end of me, and the end of my marriage, for that matter.
If you're married, right?
Yeah. So I mostly, but when I'm out, I just go hard. I'm like, if I leave the house, I'm like, I'm not leaving the house for one set. The kids are down. I'm already out. I'm going to go do a set, and then or if I'm in, if I'm in the road in Chicago, I'm going to go do the 2 club sets, and then I'm going to find the 1 a.m. open mic after that. I'm going to just get the reps in, over and over. Cause I'm still by, age standards, or by, comedic age standards, I'm not Naz. I need as many sets as I can get. I'm still figuring out how to do this. So,
we're all are, trust me.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all still figuring out. I mean, you never get to a point where you go, you know what? I think I've made it, and I'm just gonna relax and just do this.
Does it get easy? Does it get easier ever? Like, is it easier to write new stuff? Like, because you have an idea of what works or not, or?
It gets easier a little bit on the writing, yes. You kind of get an idea what's funny, but you get shocked sometimes with the audience, like, oh, I thought that was funny. But
right.
But then again, I think the more you've done it, the more balance you have in your life, to where you feel, oh, okay, I don't have to do all these shows. I can just do this and balance. It's all about balancing family, kids, life, career. So that's, and you know what? I'm very impressed by you. And there's another one that I was very impressed with is Taylor Tomlinson, who was my student many years ago when she was 16, and then she was really the only student I had of all of them that really went out and started doing 2 or 3 open mics a night and all that, and she gave you just a good what do you call it?
A good shout. Yeah, Taylor's still one of my best friends. You know how it is, and I'm sure you have these contacts all these years later. Who you start with, you get real close to them, and Taylor and I just did every show under the sun for years, and I talked to her. She's 27 now, and she's like, I feel like we've gotten closer as I've gotten older. I was like, well, yeah, it wasn't really appropriate for me to have a friendship with you when you were 19. Like, grown men don't have a lot of close friendships with 19-year-old girls that go well. But now that she's an adult, so I open for her a lot. Her and I text almost every day. She's one of my, and you're right. She just, when you're that talented and you work that hard, then the sky's the limit. I've always said that I'm not talented enough to not work hard.
Yeah, you are, but you have to work hard. There's no shortcut.
So when you have someone that's both, where they're just this phenom, and you've got that work ethic, then you're like, yeah, there you go. The world is yours. So I'm just going to enjoy the ride.
So how do you deal with rejection? I mean, we are in a career that there's a lot of rejection as far
Yeah.
as, maybe getting the gig and then canceled, or, you apply for it and then boom, it just dropped. How do you handle that? And I want you to take your time, because you're not only speaking to comedians, you're speaking to people, single people who, thought they're going to go on that date and it didn't, someone who applied for this new job and they didn't. How do you deal with rejection, Dustin?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it is a very, very important part of our career and of our life. It is a very, people say like, oh, I think we deal with rejection on a more visceral level than most humans, and that it's not just about shows and opportunities. It's every time they don't laugh at a joke. That's a form of rejection. You are
Right.
not funny to me right now. Ooh, that's ooh, that one stings a lot. Um, a couple thoughts on that. One, I starting a couple years ago, I stopped making goals like, hey, I want to be on the Tonight Show, or hey, I want to get passed at this club, or hey, I want to open for this person, because I stopped making any goal that somebody else got to decide. If
Mm,
I'm on the Tonight Show, that's not up to me. That's up to the booker of the Tonight Show. That's why my goals should have nothing to do with another person. And so that helped me kind of deal with the rejection, because the rejection hurt when it was something I was like, oh, well, I have to do this, or oh, I want to do this so bad. When my goals became much more oriented on my work ethic, my efforts, and just trying to be as funny as I can, and to control the things that I can control. And that being said, it's always easier to say this in hindsight, but the rejections really do guide your life and career as
sure.
much, if not more so, than the acceptances. You think you want something so bad, and then they say no, and then you realize that you were chasing something that wasn't yours anyways. That wasn't that there was something else that was richer and better for you. And everything like that in my career and my life has come about that way, where it's when I stop, when the desperation stops and I just kind of let things happen more organically. It doesn't mean that I'm not driven, but I mean, usually they come out much better in a much healthier way anyways.
That's a great answer, and I really think you're right. When maybe it wasn't for you in the first place when you get rejected, but saying that you don't even, I don't know if people, I heard you correctly, but then there's people might misunderstand, like, okay, Dustin will not seek anything because he doesn't want to be rejected. Because, you gotta try, you gotta apply, you gotta
Right,
call
right.
the booker, you gotta do
Yeah,
something.
yeah. Definitely not what I put myself out there constantly, and
Right.
have today, and I will tomorrow. That's we're in the business of that. But when I switch them from like, these are things that I want, and it'd be great if that happened, but I'm not going to be shattered if you say no. It's because I've been there before and I've felt that before, and it doesn't necessarily, hey, I thought this would be an enhancement for me if this thing happened, but it's not going to break me if it doesn't happen. There's nothing that I'll take the lick, and then eventually the actual way that I'll deal with it is to laugh at it. When I can get to the point, whether it's someone just trolling me online, or when someone says no to me for whatever reason they think, and when I'm able to just like have a laugh about it being, asinine or ludicrous or whatever, for whatever reason it happened. Or, sometimes it's just funny that people say no to you. Sometimes you go, man, why did I sign up for this career? And you just kind of lick your wounds a little bit and have a laugh about it.
That's true. That's true. You became the opening act for John Christ,
I did,
and
yeah.
and then it was great. Busy, busy. He's another hardworking guy. Really hardworking.
The first time that I met John, we were immediately kind of connected, because we were doing the the CCA showcase, right? The Christian Comedy Association showcase.
I was there. Yes.
Yeah, and so we go into the green room, and the lineup was up on the board. This is my first time being in the showcase, and John comes in and goes, "Hey, can I go up early? I have another set." And I go, "That's the guy." Like that's that. I'm not saying he's better than everybody. I'm saying that's my connection. That's who I resonate with, which is like, hey man, I'm in town. I'm gonna out hustle everybody, you know. And he absolutely is a hard worker.
That's awesome. So you guys got busy on the road doing tours. You're expecting certain money, then boom, everything stops, and that's not, that's not what the podcast is about. But what did you feel like? Oh my Lord, I have all these dates, and now nothing is going on.
Yeah, it's interesting when stories like that happen. For whatever reason, you see projects stop or touring stop or whatever it may be. A lot of people, they really do just think about the main artist, and they forget about how many other folks are involved. Those were big tours, multiple buses and drivers and merch people. Those were big tours. And I just felt real sad, about all of it. And, you're sad that it affects everybody involved in that situation. You just, I feel like COVID is very similar. I feel like there's a lack of mourning a lot of the time. And that everyone's just kind of racing for their hot take, and not enough people are just being sad about the situation. And, that was certainly how, me and my wife felt in the moment.
Okay, let's cry over those 20-some days. And then COVID hits after that, huh?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Those dates weren't going to happen either way, which is a really kind of interesting way to look at it, but so actually what happened was we lost that and rebuilt the calendar, and then that got canceled. So I got my 2020 canceled twice.
Hey, you're special, huh?
I feel like Job at this point,
Has your 13-year-old or your daughter ever said, "Dad, you missed my birthday. You weren't there for me. You were doing your comedy"?
No, but that's a good impersonation of them. My kids have kind of gotten used to, we celebrate, like, I don't miss major holidays, I'm home for the biggies, and usually birthdays, we just plan the party around whenever I'm there. Right. Like, and that's kind of what my kids have gotten used to. They're like, no, my dad clearly loves me, like he's supportive. He's here. He's involved. He might be gone on October 30th, which is when Gloria's birthday is here, but we had a birthday party on the 27th or November 3rd when he was here. So it's less about the day, right? It's so much more about the being loved and cherished, and just feeling their presence. So they're even though I had started comedy when they were alive, two of them, they don't really have much of a recollection before it. I don't know. Are your kids the same way, or how?
Yeah. Well, I was doing comedy before they were born, so
it's the only world they know.
Yeah, they don't know that before comedy. So, let me ask you. So, COVID hit, and then every comic wasn't doing anything, outside of like doing shows on virtually. You recorded an album and in a parking lot in LA. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I kind of just got to work because I'm not, idle hands makes the devil's work, right? Like I was like, okay, we got to do something. So what happened was, I really started doing a lot more social media stuff. I started making more videos, making more consistent content, and that was making some rounds, and that was good. And then I started a backyard tour. I just threw it out to my fans, like, hey, who's got a yard? I want to come do your shows. I'm not going to not work. And so I did 20, 30 backyard tour dates. It got a little too cold. We shut those down. But hey, do you want to come to Iowa in January? No, I do not. But what kind of came from that was through a lot of the socials and some of the stuff that I was doing, I got on the a little more on the radar of a guy named Kev on Stage, who would go on to produce my special. He invited me to do, he has an online show that he does called Keep Your Distance. I went there. The production company was there. They kind of saw my set and said like, hey, we really like you. What, are you interested in any projects? And I said, well, at the beginning of the year, I was talking about filming a comedy special. I was going to be headlining a place that's your old stomping grounds, the Hollywood Improv. I was going to be headlining the Hollywood Improv, and we were inviting various buyers to come out and see if they wanted to, shop the hour, and if they had any interest in producing it. And then all of that went away. Literally can't even do shows indoors. And then Transit Pictures, who produced it, approached me or made it, and then Kev got on as a producer, and we just said, let's make this ourselves. Let's just make this, own it, distribute it the way that we want to distribute it. That's kind of what came with the special. So yeah, I mean, it's in a parking lot in LA and at Transit Pictures, and it's like 25, 30 people. They're wearing masks. It's outside. It's fun. It's a good time.
That it was funny, and I know people can buy it or rent it on what do you call it?
On
Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime and others. Questions. Let's see. How did you become a believer in Christ? Or were you always a Christian?
No. I started going to church and came to faith in late middle school, early high school. I was up in the Seattle area. A friend of mine skated. We were both skaters, and he invited me to a skateboard rally at the church. And a guy jumped through a ring of fire and on a skateboard and said he believed in Jesus. And I said, I want to believe in Jesus too. And that's how I got in. That was my initiation.
Someone going through the lake of fire, and he told you he was a Christian. That's
it was a little bit Jesus, a little bit Johnny Cash. I was in for all of it. So that was when I started regularly going to church, and I just kind of stuck around,
And you became a minister, you said, for a while?
Yeah. I was in ministry for 5-7 years, something like that, for a while. It was kind of, how it is. You just, those early years, you're just kind of figuring out who you are, what you want to do. And I knew I got into ministry for the same reason I got into comedy, is I had something to say. I felt like I had, I don't want to say a message, but I had, that was my role in the world, was to be a communicator. And so that was the same reason that I was in journalism for a while, and I ran like a comedy blog for a while, and I was in ministry for a while. I had something to say. I wanted to, I had takes. I wanted to kind of be in that area. And then once I started stand-up, I was like, no, this is what I was looking for. This particular medium, just like this, not behind a pulpit. And with the, so what I try and do is I want to talk about what's happening in the world, but I want to take the edge off. I want to help people talk about serious issues, but to do so in a way that's actually unifying, and that we can laugh at it and we can see how ridiculous it is. That was kind of the shift outside of ministry.
So how do you deal with political correctness and people complain? Lay it on us.
Well, it is funny because none of us can fully avoid it, because you and I are both clean comics, and we take flack for it sometimes. It really, I try and take it all with a grain of salt. There are sometimes where somebody will say something to me and I'll go, ooh, you might be right here. This could be on me, because that's what we do. We try things. My heart wasn't in the wrong place here, but I overstepped. Or I remember I did a joke about like once about like, I love my son, but I also twice a day think about putting him up for adoption. And it was about, that joke is about the hardships of parenting, and I got like a probably 100 comments and DMs of folks who had been adopted and were saying like, hey man, I know you're just trying to be funny, but know that, there's this myth of being put up for adopt. And I looked at it and I was like, okay, I'm not trying to bring down adoptees, like this isn't my, and so sometimes, but then I would put that at 1% of the time. 99% of the time is people getting offended on other people's behalf. And just, they're just, what you're doing is not for them. I got an email. Oh, can I read you a
Oh,
text?
please. Please.
Okay.
I love
So,
this.
I got to pull it up real quick because, so my special came out and I do a joke about seatbelts the joke is it's a hypocritical law because it says, your safety is so important to us. It's a law that you wear a seatbelt unless you are a child on a school bus, right? Like there's no seatbelts on a school bus.
That's right.
And the person who gets it is the driver, the one person on the bus that has maxed out on their life potential, right? Like that. So that's not an anti-bus driver joke. That's a joke about the hypocrisies of the seat. Okay, so I get this email. Here we go. I tried sending you a message on Instagram, but I'm not certain it went through. So they're coming at me from two angles. I recently ran across your comedy on Instagram and was looking forward to watching your Amazon special. And then I heard your seatbelt joke because I posted it on social media and my heart dropped. You say that bus drivers have maxed out their life potential when millions of parents entrust their children's lives to bus drivers each day. I believe there's a principle in comedy that goes something like this. You can only make fun of people in your own group. So go ahead and make jokes about white dads, white Christians, etc., all you like, but please refrain from directing your jabs at people who aren't like you. I mean, this is what I'm talking. And you know what I did get though, Naz? I got probably 30 comments and DMs from bus drivers who said that is hysterical.
Funny. Yeah.
So that's what it is. It's don't get offended on somebody else's behalf. If you're coming to me and you're telling me how this, like the adoption one, like they're like, listen, this perpetuates a harmful narrative of what adoption is. I'm going to take that and go, that's my bad, guys. I'll delete that. I overstepped here. But don't come at me when bus drivers are telling me how funny this is. And the spirit of the joke is not anti-bus driver. It's pointing out the hypocrisy of a law. So I look at that and I screenshot it and I have a laugh and I send it to my friends and then we have a laugh. That's how I deal with it.
You're right. There's always one person that's so serious and they complain. And I always want to say if they ever complain and it's just like, okay, can you let me know how many complaints you had at other things in the last week?
Right. Yeah.
That's who
point.
you are. Yeah. Like I do a joke about, I said, since the pandemic, I know I love my kids so much because I didn't stab him yet.
Right.
It's like, I'm never going to do that.
Right.
And then
exactly.
And comedians, when we do jokes, it's not like we hate someone. If we're so angry, I mean, you can't be funny when you're so angry. People will sense that in the audience, and that's not our job. And I know your personality and mine is like, we're the peacemakers. We don't want anybody to be offended. We're just want to be funny. So
yeah, that's the goal. But Tammy Pescatelli said, she said, comedy is for everybody. Stand-up comedy is not. And I agree with that. I think that what we do specifically sometimes is just not for everybody. They're not going to love what we do, which is just a person up there sharing their takes, making their jokes, their jabs. Yes, there are people that are the butt of the jokes. And you try not to punch down, right? Mark Maron says you punch up and you punch yourself, but there's just going to be some folks that you just go like, what I'm doing is not for you. And that's okay.
That's true. Now, give me, what was your worst gig, or not worst gig, or something like the most embarrassing or bad, something happened in your a gig that you can't forget.
Yeah.
Tell us about it now that you can talk about it.
yeah, exactly. There's has to be like a post-mortem, right? There's so many bad gigs, it's when you're coming up, it's like Seinfeld says, right? Like asking a comedian about a bad gig. Sometimes it's like a taxi driver about a wrong turn. You're like, I got a lot of them. I got one that I haven't told this one yet. A
Oh,
while
good.
this one was a couple years ago. So I was doing a show. It was kind of a restaurant bar show here in San Diego. And it was one of those shows, right, where you call it like a bar hijack show where not everyone in the audience knew there was a
It's there
comedy
for a
show.
yep. We.
Yeah, and some of them knew. Some of them, there was about maybe 30 people in the room, and maybe half of them knew, and the other half was one big table that did not know. And I was headlining, and so I was supposed to do a half an hour, and
Ooh.
there were like 7 comics before me, so the show was too
Ow.
long.
Ow.
And
Ow.
and so I go up, and it's going like okay. I'm trying to just ignore them because that group had decided they were just going to ignore the comedy show and talk at full volume. And so I was like, okay, I'll just try and connect with the people here. And, so I'm going into my set. I'm like, okay, I'm getting them. Out of nowhere, that group of 15 all starts singing Happy Birthday.
Ah.
And 15 people singing Happy Birthday is louder than my mic. Like, I can't riff on it. I just have to wait for them to be done, which when you're waiting for Happy Birthday to end, it's a long song when you're on stage.
That's right.
So we go, I kind of laugh at it. I play it off a little bit. And I'm chipping along. I kind of get them back. And then they do it again. They do it again at like the 17-minute mark. I was like, you guys are just trolling me at this point. Like, are you? And then someone goes like, no, we're not doing it on purpose. We just realized there was an actual birthday, another birthday we had forgot about. So they do it again. They're singing Happy Birthday at this point every 8 minutes during my set is what it feels like. So we're chipping along. We've gotten to the point now where the people who were watching the show are no longer watching the show because they're like, this is not a fun experience for me. And then they do it again. They say third time. And I shut them up. I was like, stop doing this. And everyone gets real tense in the bar. Everyone's like, what is happening right now? And I go, if we're going to do this, let's all do this. And then I collectively lead us all in singing Happy Birthday.
That's amazing. That's what I would have done. Yes.
And then I put the mic in the stand and I leave. Because I looked at the guy and I was like, I'm supposed to do like 4 more minutes, but don't do this to me.
I know.
So it ended well, but it was 24 minutes of absolute torture before that, And then they like came and they invited me over, like, come have a drink with us. And I was like, I don't like you guys.
I don't like you. Yeah, you ruined my show.
Yeah. I'm not happy with how this went. It's one of those shows that everyone was like, oh, that was amazing. It's like, no, I survived that gig is what I did.
But don't you love it always after a show like that? The next day you do a show and everybody's watching and listening and you feel like floating. It's like, at least
when you people talk about like low energy crowds, and I go, listen, if they're paying attention, I love them. If you do enough rowdy shows, like you said, if I can just get everybody looking at me and paying attention, I'm on board. Like, let's, where you're not dealing with interruptions, or I'm not even talking about hecklers. Like you said, I'm just talking about like, these like outdoor you do a lot of them,
yes.
where you'll do like festivals and stuff like that. And you're like, you're just trying to get their attention half the time.
You're right. It's just, I always like, when I do like a stadium or something, I'm just going to find a group of people that I can see laughing, and I'm going to focus on that. And eventually everybody will join in, unless there's birthdays in the crowd. But you're right. It's difficult, but those difficult, it's always like whenever you go through a difficult time, a difficult hardship, it's like, that's what makes you stronger and better in the next show. And truly with the pandemic, people are complaining about the pandemic. I can't wait. Like the other day, I went to Nashville and I did something with the Newsboys. We were recording virtually, but we had people in the audience.
Right.
And normally when you're like before, you go, you have a big audience, 1,000 people, you're on an automatic pilot.
Yes.
You're not trying new stuff. You're just going through, and it's been a while since you've been on stage. We used to go every night. Now we're every month. So it's like your timing is just, but I had to stop and actually listen to the audience laughing because I don't know when's the next time I was gonna hear that. And, and it
Yeah.
was like, oh, yes. And I know when this is over, we're going to get back and we're going to start doing the best stuff we can and listen and appreciate every little show we do. And I know you do. So let me ask you this. Uh, what are you working on right now that your project is out, overwhelmed? What are you working on right now?
Yeah, so I'm definitely, promoting the special and doing various, podcasts and interviews and stuff like that. So that's a chunk of it. I continually am always working on my podcast. I have a weekly podcast called "Don't Make Me Come
Oh,
Back There."
don't
Yeah,
make me
it's
come back there. When is that?
yeah
That's on all the podcast
on all the
channels, right?
podcasts. Yeah, that's every Tuesday, and then we release there. And it's just a funny podcast about family. And then now I'm just kind of waiting so I can go back on stage and start writing the next hour. I kind of feel like I was really glad that I kind of got those jokes out, and now I'm like, okay, what's next? Time to rebuild. And so hopefully we'll start. I've got some dates coming up, some touring, some clubs have got coming up, but it's real intermittent, and you know how it is, like anything that's on your calendar right now, you
Is
could
a
lose it.
blessing.
Yeah, exactly. And you could lose it at any
Oh
point.
yeah.
So
Oh yes. Oh yes. I know exactly what. Okay, let's be. I do this with comedians only, and just to see that how quick and funny. I know normally we don't like that surprise, but what do you say to a dog owners that don't clean up after their dog?
That's oh man, I don't think you're not qualified to have a dog. Come on. That's what I would
Okay,
say. That's like not giving your kid a diaper. You shouldn't be able to do this. You shouldn't be allowed.
that's funny. Okay, how about a rude store assistant? Like you're going to a place and the assistant is very rude. What do you say to them?
Oh, this drives me crazy. This is like people just don't, I can't stand people that don't want to do their job. This is like the bane. This is probably the most mad that I get in public. I just get really mean and really sarcastic to them, which is not good. It's certainly not a good Christian witness. I'll be like, thank you so much for your excellent service today. I get really
What
mean and condescending.
what do you say to those people that knock on, those solar sales people or people who knock on your door want to sell you something?
I never say a word to them. The door doesn't open. I'll shut the door in their face. If I open the door and I see a clipboard, I shut the door.
It is the clipboard that throws
It's
them off. Yeah. Okay. What do you people who talk loudly on their phone right next to you?
oh man, it's I have you ever heard I've been on a plane when someone tries and takes a call, you're like, what are you doing? What are
Oh
you
yeah.
my instinct there is to slap the phone out of their hand. What I do is put on headphones or walk away. But you just, I don't it's especially when you can hear both people, like when they're on speaker,
Oh
you're
yes.
like, this is a conference call now. I'm on this conversation with you. Not a fan.
That,
Not a fan.
what do you say to someone who parks in a handicap parking lot right in front of you? What do you say? And they're not disabled.
Oh man, is it bad to wish a curse on them? Is that allowed? Is it bad to be like, I hope that you earned that spot now? Like that's like the lowest form of humanity. But or maybe they just, I don't know. Maybe I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and they really had to go to the bathroom or something. I don't know. I don't know.
Last question. People with strong BO standing close to you. What do you say to them?
Oh, I'll tell them. I'll tell them that they smell. Yeah, I've told strangers that they smell before. Yeah, I'll do it again. It's for their best, right? Isn't that good?
Right.
Isn't that good to tell them? Yeah. Or maybe I'll just kind of like, does something smell? Like just put it in their mind that they might smell.
That's right. What do you call it? Do you think any of your kids will be comedians?
All of them could. They're all funny. The middle child, Gloria, she's the most kind of like me, and like personality wise, and that she has this weird mix that she can be introverted, but she also loves being on stage, which is a weird thing, right? Like I'm not like comedian. Oh, like, oh, I bet, or you like the life of the party. Comedians are very rarely the life of the party. They're more writer type. So I
Right.
think each of them could. They're all funny enough. I think the middle one could very well go into that or acting or something like that.
Being a dad, and you're always in your show, people when they watch, what is the best advice you give to young fathers? I mean, you started at age 20. What advice?
Yeah.
Oh, not age. You got married at 20, but
I
I
was
mean,
19 when I got married. I was 22 when we had our first kid. Yeah.
22. What
Yeah.
advice? I mean, that's young. That's trying to make a living and raising a child.
Yeah.
What is your best advice to fathers?
I would say don't have kids that young. That's my that's
That's
my first piece of advice.
okay.
I think when you think about your memories with your parents, you do remember the things that you do, and you do remember somewhat the things you remember some of the things that you did, and you really remember excuse me, you remember some of the things you did, and you remember a few of the things to say, but what you really remember is how you felt around them. And did you feel safe? Did you laugh with them? Did you feel cared for? And that's kind of what I try and focus on as a dad is, am I creating an environment in my home where they feel loved, where they know they're valued, where they're cherished, where they know I want to protect them, where I'm stern on important things. Somebody talk about that, like, do your parents think do your kids think you're funny? I was like, my kids should only think I'm so funny because I have to talk to them about very serious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not a comedian in the family. I'm a comedian for a profession, but I'm the dad at home. So I would just, again, whenever like like last night, I kept the kids up later than I should have because we were all just wrestling in the back room. And my wife came in. She's like, it's past bedtime. But I'm just thinking, like, in this moment, we're all laughing. We all feel good. We all feel safe. We all feel loved. And those are like the environment. I think that'll be the stuff that sticks, not the fails, not the couple times that you lost your temper on them or you gave bad advice or whatever it may be. I think just creating kind of that culture of positive emotion for them. And that's not always happiness. A lot of time, like I said, is like they know mom and dad are mad right now, but that's because I'm not safe or I'm not being protecting myself, or it's for good reason that they're upset.
What do you say to a husband who's probably busy like you, traveling, doing a lot of dates, working on a career that's really demanding?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do that keeps the spark in your marriage, that keeps your wife interested in you?
Right. Yeah, I think it's all about the nature of any career and the nature of our careers especially is very narcissistic.
Oh, yes.
It's very self-focused. My jokes, my dates, my tour, my flights, my all these things, me. And so the best thing that you can do is really, really, as best as you can, and this has been with big trial and error for me, is to put yourself in their shoes. Not to be, because that stops me from being defensive. Like when my wife's upset that I'm leaving, if I get defensive, that's not good. But if
Mm,
I understand where she's coming from, I tend to say the better thing. I tend to act the better way. I tend to, communicate in a way that is healthier. Like a lot of stuff, like the road is a good example of just knowing, hey, I'm gone. My wife is texting a lot right now. That means she needs some human contact. Like she needs
mm,
me to call her, text her. She doesn't need me to fix a situation. She just needs me to talk to her. Or there is some outstanding thing, something broke, something like this. It's already hard when I'm gone. And then when an extra thing gets added, it can be overwhelming. And so,
mm-hmm.
what can I take care of? Can I have a meal sent? Can I call the landlord? Whatever, can I resolve this issue? Does one of the kids misbehaving and I need to call and talk to that kid? Just you're already doing the selfish thing of being on the road,
Right.
but how can you be selfless within that pursuit, and empathize with where they're at.
That's true. And you know what? A lot of times, some men think, wow, I have my own problems. I'm trying to provide, I'm on the road and I'm going through this hard stuff. I'm not sure about the show tonight. And then I have to worry about that too. But I like
Right.
your attitude. Well, like you have to put yourself in their shoe
Right.
and have to
Right.
deal.
Right. And frankly, having done both, what they're doing is way harder. We're like, oh man, I gotta fly and sit in a seat and have someone bring me food and drinks and then gotta go work for 45 minutes. Like what they're doing is a lot harder than what we're doing.
It is true. I mean, we changed scenery. We're in a hotel room.
Yeah,
We get to the gig and everybody like they have someone like catering for you. Hey, wait, if you need anything, I'll get you anything.
yeah,
You don't have,
yeah.
and then you come home and like, honey, the trash is not gonna come in by itself. And
Yeah, re-entry. Was that your experience? I always thought re-entering the home was much harder than actually me leaving and being gone.
it
That's gone now. I'm home is hard.
that's powerful. That's true because you're coming with like, oh, I'm glad I'm done. Man, you should see how the audience had a standing ovation and I was signing books and DVDs and their line and I love it. And you come home and like, oh, your kid you need to talk to your kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or you like maybe you overstep on something and they're like, hey, you've been gone for 4 days and we were kind of okay without you, like you kind of have to be real delicate
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
You're like, is this taken care of or do you need me to step in here? So it's a real
Remember, I
balance.
live here. I live here. Remember me?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what do you encourage in this last couple minutes? How do you encourage people watching and listening right now? About the pandemic, about losing work, about just all these things that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, if someone's listening to your podcast, I think they're on the right path because I know this is cliche, and especially coming from a comedian, but I really do believe in the power of laughter. Particularly, I think the power of laughing at something. Like
Hmm.
it is something, whether it's trauma or whether it is hardship, whatever it is in your life, when you get to a point where you're able to laugh at it, you kind of take its power away from you.
Hmm.
And I think that this is the role of comedians in society, is to get us to laugh at almost everything. Now, some stuff you're not yet, some stuff you're like, not yet. And the pandemic can be a weird one, but I think I don't know any person who hasn't been looking to humor and comedy during this. To me, it's elevated, even though we're unessential workers. It has elevated the importance of comedians in society. Of like, hey, we need someone. Things are so hard. We need to laugh about this, and not necessarily like be distracted. Like literally laugh about these things, and that's what I kind of tried to do in the special, which was to have some laughs about what my career is now and the fact that it's an outdoor gig, and it talked a little bit about the masks and some of the pandemic stuff, but not exclusively that, where like I said, I try and talk about things but take the edge off a little bit. And that's why I like, same with politics, like I like poking funs at both sides, because I think if you can laugh at it, you can take it a little less seriously. And Lord knows we could use people taking their politics less seriously. i think
Yes.
i think the only thing that I take less seriously than a politician is the person that takes the politician seriously.
that that is true. And you know what? We found out in the pandemic, like there's normal people who are not comedians, they're hilarious. There's stuff that's coming up. And I think we have to up our game. Okay, here goes my camera, which is we're ready to close. So I just want to thank you
There we go.
so much. Thank you so much, Dustin, for taking the time. I know
Oh
you're a
yeah.
busy guy, and I want to encourage the audience. Please do go to Amazon Prime and rent or buy "Overwhelmed" by Dustin Nickerson. And also, if you want to reach him, he's at dustinnickerson.com. Right? Is
Correct.
that the website?
That's
So
correct.
if you want to book, remember, guys, to book comedians, now is the time to do it. Don't wait till like everybody got their vaccine and then the calendars are already full, which they're not right now. And we can negotiate much better now than we
You're
can
gonna get a better rate right now
a
than you
better
will in
rate
6
right
months.
now before you get hit April. But thank you so much for taking the time. And I want to remind you guys that every weeknight at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time, here on this Facebook page, Comedian Nazareth, we have our show live with Naz. This is show 190 tonight. So join us and where you can be the comedian. And also, thank you so much, and God bless you guys. Thank you again, Dustin, and hopefully we can work together soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Thanks, Naz.
Maybe I'll have you drive to New York this time. Love you, man. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
take
God
care,
bless.
buddy.
Bye.